My stepmother erased my mom from our house, so I evicted her and my dad. She tried to push me out, but I found my mom's will, called her lawyer, and gave them 30 days to leave, and that was just the start of their fall. If this story pulled you in, please subscribe to Velvet Stories so you don't miss the next one. Heather moved in when I was 15, 6 months after Mom died. She redecorated immediately, erasing every trace of my mother like she'd never existed. The family photos came down first, then Mom's books, her dishes, even the curtains she'd sewn by hand disappeared overnight, replaced with Heather's minimalist gray aesthetic. "It's important we all move forward," Heather announced at dinner one night. "Living in a shrine to the past isn't healthy," Dad nodded along like a puppet. I said nothing, just moved Mom's recipe box to my room before it could vanish, too. The uncomfortable comments started small. I left dishes in the sink once after a late shift at my part-time job. Heather called a family meeting about respecting shared spaces. I stayed up studying until midnight. Heather complained my desk lamp bothered her from across the hall. I came home and found my door didn't have a lock anymore. "Privacy concerns," she explained. When I turned 17, she ramped up the campaign. I made her anxious with my presence. My schedule disrupted her routine. She felt like a guest in her own home. Dad would sigh and ask if I could just try harder to get along with her. The woman who'd thrown away my mother's wedding china because it clashed with her new color scheme. Then one morning, I walked into the kitchen to find Heather sitting at the table with a real estate agent. They were discussing converting my bedroom into a home office. "Once she goes to college in the fall," Heather was saying, gesturing at floor plans. "I got into the state school," I said quietly. "I'm commuting to save money." Heather's face went cold. That afternoon, she cornered me in the hallway. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation," she said. "You need to understand something. This is my home now. I've been patient, but your presence here makes me deeply uncomfortable." I started to respond, but Dad appeared from his office. He'd clearly heard everything. For once, he didn't look away. "Heather," he said, his voice flat. "Whose name is on the deed?" The color drained from her face. "Well, both of ours, but wrong, just mine. This was Victoria's house. My mother's name hung in the air like a ghost. She left it to me in trust for our daughter. You're a guest here, Heather. You've always been a guest." I'd never heard him sound like that. Cold, final. Heather's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "But you said I said a lot of things." Dad interrupted. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking clearly. That ends now. The next morning, I found legal documents on the kitchen counter. Dad had transferred 50% ownership of the house directly to me. At 17, Heather moved into the guest room that night. She stopped making eye contact with me entirely. But here's what Dad didn't know, what neither of them knew. While cleaning out boxes in the attic 2 years earlier, I'd found something. Mom's journal from the year before she died. And in it, detailed entries about how she discovered Dad's affair with Heather, his secretary at the time, 6 months before Mom's cancer diagnosis. I'd kept that journal hidden, waiting. And now, with 50% of the house in my name and Heather spiraling, I had a decision to make. Because that journal contained something else. Evidence that Mom had started divorce proceedings, that she'd planned to leave Dad everything, but only if certain conditions were met. Conditions he'd violated. Conditions that, according to the lawyer's notes tucked in the back, would trigger a clause that could change everything. The lawyer's name was inscribed on every page. Harold Brennan, attorney at law. His office was still listed in the phone book. I checked. I called him from a friend's house, not wanting the call to show up on our home phone records. "Mr. Brennan, my name is Alexis Thorpe. I'm Victoria Thorpe's daughter." The silence on the other end stretched for several heartbeats. "I've been wondering when you'd call," he said finally. "How much do you know?" "Everything. I have the journal and your notes." Another pause. "Can you come to my office?" "Not today." "Saturday, when your father's usually golfing," I agreed. That Saturday morning, I told Dad I was meeting friends at the mall. Heather was locked in the guest room, refusing to come out. Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. Brennan's office was in an old building downtown, the kind with brass fixtures and wood paneling. He was in his late 60s with white hair and kind eyes that reminded me of my grandfather. "Your mother was an exceptional woman," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "When she came to me with evidence of your father's infidelity, she was devastated, but she was also practical. She knew a divorce would destroy her financially while she was fighting cancer. Michael bills were already astronomical, so she stayed." I said. "She stayed, but she wasn't naive. She had me draft documents that would protect you." He pulled out a thick folder. "Your mother owned this house outright before she married your father. It was her grandmother's, passed down through her family for generations. She put it in a trust specifically designed to keep it out of the marital estate. Dad said she left it to him in trust for me. Brennan's expression hardened. Your father lied. Your mother left the house directly to you with a trustee to manage it until you turned 18. I'm that trustee. Your father has been living there at my discretion, which I granted out of respect for your need for stability. The room tilted. What? The house has been yours since your mother died. Your father has no legal claim to it. Never did the property transfer he showed you this week. Brennan shook his head, meaningless. He can't transfer what he never owned. I sat back, processing. Does he know? He knows. I told him at the reading of the will. He chose to ignore it, hoping you'd never find out. The affair, the lies, the way he's let that woman erase your mother. All of it is documented in case you ever needed proof. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Your mother's instructions were clear. Tell you when you were ready, when you came looking for answers. He slid the folder across the desk. This is everything. Deeds, trust documents, her journal photocopies, documentation of the affair, financial records showing how your father's been mismanaging funds that should have been preserved for you. I opened the folder with shaking hands. There were bank statements showing Dad had taken money from Mom's accounts before she died, receipts for jewelry he bought Heather while Mom was still in chemotherapy. Email printouts that made my stomach turn. There's more, Brennan said quietly. Your mother had a life insurance policy, $500,000. It was supposed to go into a college fund for you. Your father cashed it out and used it to pay off his business debts. The rage that flooded through me was cold, precise. What can I do? Legally, you can evict them both today. You're 17, but as the property owner with documented trustee approval, you have that right. Or you can wait until you're 18 in 4 months and handle it then. Either way, they have no leg to stand on. I thought about Heather in the guest room, her careful campaign to push me out. I thought about Dad's complicity, his weakness, the way they tried to erase Mom while living in her house, spending her money, sleeping in her bed. I want to wait, I said, until I'm 18. But I want everything ready to go the day I turn 18. Brennan smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. I was hoping you'd say that. Over the next 4 months, I played the perfect daughter. Agreeable, quiet. I got a part-time job at a bookstore and started saving money. I made sure my grades were perfect. I applied to colleges, good ones, with my guidance counselor's help. At home, the dynamic had shifted. Heather stayed in the guest room most of the time, only emerging for meals. She'd stopped her commentary about my presence, stopped trying to control my schedule. Dad walked around like a ghost, his guilt finally catching up to him. I caught him looking at Mom's old photos sometimes, the ones I'd rescued from the trash and hidden in my room. He never asked where I'd gotten them, never acknowledged what he'd let Heather do. One night in January, 2 months before my birthday, he knocked on my door. Can we talk? I let him in. He sat on the edge of my bed, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I know I failed you, he said. After your mother died, I wasn't thinking straight. Heather was there and I was drowning and I made mistakes. You had an affair with her before Mom died. His face went white. How did I know everything, Dad? Everything? He didn't try to deny it. Just sat there, shoulders slumped. I loved your mother, I did, but I was weak. I'm still weak. And I've let you down in every way that matters. I could have forgiven him in that moment. Could have tried to rebuild something. But then I thought about Mom sitting in chemotherapy alone while he bought Heather jewelry. Thought about her journals, her pain, her attempts to protect me even while dying. Yeah, I said, you did. He left without another word. The weeks leading up to my birthday were strange. Heather became almost invisible, spending entire days locked in the guest room. I'd hear her on the phone sometimes. Her voice sharp and angry, probably talking to her sister or her friends about how unfair everything was. Dad tried to act normal, making small talk at breakfast, asking about school, but his eyes were hollow. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know what. I spent those weeks planning. I met with Brennan twice more, going over every detail. He helped me open a bank account in my name only, helped me understand the property taxes, the utilities, all the practical things I'd need to manage. He even connected me with a part-time property manager who could help if things got overwhelming. Your mother thought of everything, he told me during our last meeting before my birthday. She knew your father would fall apart without her. Knew he'd make poor choices, so she built safety nets for you. Did she know about Heather before she died? Yes, she confronted your father about 6 months before the end. He promised to break it off. Obviously, he didn't. Brennan's jaw tightened. Your mother made me promise to tell you the truth when you were old enough. She didn't want you thinking she was naive or weak. She stayed because leaving would have destroyed you both financially during her treatment, but she never forgave him. I thought about Mom in those final months, how quiet she'd been, how she'd spent hours writing in her journals, making lists, having whispered phone conversations. I'd thought it was the medication making her distant. Now I understood. She'd been building a fortress around me brick by brick, knowing she wouldn't be there to protect me herself. My 18th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I went to school like normal, came home. Dad had ordered a cake, made dinner. Heather even came out of the guest room to sit at the table, though she looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Happy birthday, sweetheart, Dad said, sliding an envelope across the table. I know things have been hard, but you're an adult now. We're so proud of you. I opened it. A check for $5,000 for college, he said. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. Thanks, I actually have something to tell you both. They looked at each other nervously. I met with Harold Brennan, Mom's lawyer. Turns out the house isn't yours, Dad. It never was. Mom left it to me. You've been living here at the trust's discretion, my discretion as of today. The color drained from Dad's face. Heather's hand flew to her mouth. I'm giving you 30 days to move out, both of you. Brennan already has the paperwork filed. You'll find your eviction notice posted on the door tomorrow morning. You can't do this, Dad said, his voice cracking. This is my home. No, it's mine. It's always been mine. You lied about that just like you lied about everything else. Heather stood up so fast her chair fell over. You ungrateful little, after everything we've done for you. Everything you've done. I laughed and it sounded wrong even to my own ears. Cold, hard, you threw away my mother's things. You tried to erase her from her own house. You wanted to kick me out so you could have a home office. Don't talk to me about what you've done. Dad was crying now, actual tears. Please, we can work this out. I'll do better. You had 18 years to do better. You chose Heather over Mom while she was dying. You chose Heather over me after she was gone. Now you get to live with those choices. I stood up and walked to my room, locked the door, sat on my bed, and waited for the shaking to stop. They tried everything over the next 30 days. Dad begged. Heather threatened legal action until Brennan sent her a letter outlining exactly how much trouble she could get in for harassment. They offered to pay rent, offered to stay in the guest room and leave me alone, offered to give me the master bedroom. I said no to all of it. During the second week, Heather's mask slipped completely. I came home from work to find her in the kitchen drinking wine at 2:00 in the afternoon. This is all your fault, she slurred. Your mother was a manipulative who turned your father against his own happiness. I set my bag down carefully. My mother was dying of cancer while you were sleeping with her husband. Don't talk to me about manipulation. She could have divorced him. She chose to stay and make everyone miserable. She stayed because Dad wiped out their savings on bad investments and she needed his insurance to cover her treatment. But you knew that, didn't you? You were his secretary. You saw the accounts. Heather's face twisted. Your father loved me, loves me. She was just too sick and bitter to let him go. Get out of my house. It's not your house yet. We still have 2 weeks. Get out of my sight then, before I call Brennan and have you removed today. She stumbled past me, muttering under her breath. I heard her slam the guest room door. That night, I slept with a chair wedged under my doorknob, not trusting her anymore. Dad tried a different approach. He started leaving notes on the kitchen counter, taped to my door, tucked into my textbooks. Long, rambling apologies, explanations about his grief, his weakness, his poor choices, how he knew he'd failed Mom and me, how he wished he could go back and do everything differently. I threw them all away without reading past the first few lines. On day 22, Mom's sister called, Aunt Patricia, who I hadn't spoken to since the funeral. Your father called me, she said. He's devastated, says you're kicking him out of his own home. It's not his home, it's mine. Mom left it to me. Silence. Then Victoria never told me that. She didn't tell anyone. She wanted to protect me. More silence. Your father said you found out about Heather. Yeah, I knew about her. Aunt Patricia said quietly during Victoria's treatment. I saw them together at a restaurant when I was in town for a conference. Your mother made me promise not to say anything. Said she had a plan. She did. This was it. Your father is calling everyone. Your mother's friends are family trying to paint you as vindictive and cruel, trying to get someone to intervene. Let him. I'm not going to. She said I thought you should know that Victoria would be proud of you. She spent her last year protecting you from exactly this, making sure you'd have a foundation when she was gone. I watched her do it, watched her plan every detail while dying. It broke my heart, but now I understand why. We talked for another hour. She told me things about Mom I hadn't known. How smart she was with money. How she'd built her own small business before marrying Dad. How she'd given it up when I was born, focused on being a mother, but always regretted losing that independence. How she'd made Aunt Patricia promise to check on me after she was gone, but Dad had frozen out Mom's whole family. I should have pushed harder, Aunt Patricia said. Should have stayed in your life even when your father made it difficult. I'm sorry, it's okay, I'm okay, you're more than okay, you're Victoria's daughter, strong all the way through. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room and cried. Not sad tears, relieved ones. Someone else knew the truth. Someone else saw what Dad had done, what Mom had endured. I wasn't crazy or vindictive or cruel, I was just protecting what was mine. On day 28, I came home to find them packing. Heather wouldn't look at me. Dad kept starting sentences he couldn't finish. Where will you go? I asked, not because I cared, but because I was curious. Heather's sister has a place, Dad said quietly. We'll stay there until we figure things out. What about your business? Selling it to pay back what I took from your mother's account. Brennan made it very clear that was non-negotiable if I wanted to avoid criminal charges. I nodded. Good. The last 48 hours were surreal. I watched them dismantle their life in my house, sorting through what was theirs versus what was Mom's. Heather tried to take some of Mom's things, jewelry mostly, claiming Dad had given them to her. I called Brennan. He sent over a detailed inventory of Mom's possessions that she'd compiled before dying. Everything Heather claimed was on the list. Put it back or I file theft charges, I said. She threw the jewelry box at me. I caught it, put it in my room, locked the door. On their last day, I watched from the porch as they loaded boxes into a U-Haul. The house felt lighter already, like it could breathe again. Dad paused at the door. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am. Your mother deserved better. You deserved better. Yeah, I said. We did. They drove away. I went back inside and walked through the empty rooms. In the master bedroom, I found one of Mom's hair pins that Heather had missed tucked behind the radiator. I held it in my palm and cried for the first time in months. Then I got to work. I started in the master bedroom. Heather's gray paint went first, covered with a warm cream that made the room feel twice as bright. I hung Mom's favorite curtain, the ones I'd hidden in the attic. Found her bedding in a storage unit Dad had rented, probably to hide evidence of Heather moving in. I brought it all back. The living room was next. I repainted in soft sage green, Mom's favorite color. Hung her artwork back on the walls, her watercolors of the ocean, her pressed flowers in delicate frames. I found her piano at Aunt Patricia's house. She'd asked to store it before Dad could sell it. We hired movers to bring it back. It looked perfect in the corner by the window. The kitchen took the longest. I painted it buttery yellow, installed new hardware on the cabinets, found Mom's dishes at 3 different consignment shops around town. Heather had sold them in batches, probably to avoid suspicion. It took me 2 months and cost me most of my savings from the bookstore, but I got every piece back. I enrolled in community college, taking business classes at night while working at the bookstore during the day. My manager, Gloria, was a woman in her 60s who'd known Mom from the neighborhood. She gave me extra shifts when I needed them, was flexible about my school schedule. Your mother used to come in every week, she told me one day while we were restocking shelves. Always bought books about business and finance. Said she was planning for the future. I think she meant you. She left me the house, I said, and some money. I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. Gloria looked at me thoughtfully. I'm retiring next year. Been thinking about selling the store. You interested? The idea took root immediately. Mom's bookstore, a business of my own. Financial independence. How much for you? We'll figure something out. Your mother would want you to have it. We spent the next year planning. Gloria taught me everything. Inventory management, vendor relationships, the quirks of the neighborhood customers. Brennan helped structure the purchase as a loan with manageable payments. I used some of Mom's smaller accounts as a down payment. Meanwhile, Aunt Patricia became a regular presence in my life. She'd visit every few weeks, bringing groceries, helping with house projects, sharing stories about Mom. She'd never had kids of her own. Worked as a financial advisor downtown. She took me under her wing, teaching me things Mom would have taught me about money, investments, long-term planning. Victoria made me executive of her estate after you turned 18. She explained one evening over dinner. There are more accounts, more assets. She wanted you to have them in stages so you'd learn to manage money gradually instead of being overwhelmed. How much more enough? Your mother was smarter with money than your father ever was. She had separate investment accounts he didn't know about. Real estate in her family name. She came from money. Did you know that? Old money. Her grandmother's estate was substantial. I didn't know that. Dad had always acted like Mom's family was middle class, nothing special. But Aunt Patricia pulled out documents showing properties in 2 states. Investments, a trust fund Mom had inherited and kept separate. Why didn't she use any of this when she was sick? Pride and strategy. If she'd revealed these assets, your father would have claimed them in the divorce. This way, everything stays with you. Clean, legal, untouchable. Over the next few months, I learned the full scope of what Mom had protected. The house was just the beginning. There were rental properties generating monthly income, stocks and bonds, a college fund she'd established when I was born that Dad had never known about. You're not just comfortable, Aunt Patricia said. You're wealthy, not extravagantly, but enough that you'll never have to worry about money if you're smart about it. 6 months after kicking them out, Dad called. How are you doing? He asked. Fine, I wanted you to know. Heather and I are separating. She's moving back east and I'm getting help. Therapy, trying to figure out how I became this person, okay? I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I hung up without responding. The bookstore sale went through in April, 1 year after my 18th birthday. Gloria officially retired, handed me the keys with tears in her eyes. Make it beautiful, she said. Make it yours. I renamed it Victoria's Books within a week, had a new sign made, painted the interior in warm, welcoming colors, created a children's section Mom would have loved, full of diverse books and comfortable reading nooks. Added a coffee bar, hired 2 part-time employees, started hosting author events and book clubs. The neighborhood embraced it immediately. People who'd known Mom came by to share memories to tell me how proud she'd be. I displayed her favorite books in the window, created a Victoria's P shelf with all the titles she'd loved. Business was good, better than good. I was making enough to cover the mortgage, pay my employees, invest back into inventory. I was building something real, something mine. A year later, Dad called again. I sold the business. Paid back every cent I took from your mother's accounts plus interest. Brennan has the records. I want you to have it. Why now? Because I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, 6 months, maybe less, and I need you to know that I'm sorry, that your mother was right about everything, that I wasted the best parts of my life on cowardice and selfishness. I met him at a diner. He looked terrible, gaunt and yellow and old. We sat across from each other in awkward silence until the waitress took our order. I'm not going to say I forgive you, I told him. I don't. Maybe I never will, but I don't hate you either. That's more than I deserve, probably. We talked for an hour. He told me about Mom, about their early years together when things were good, about how he'd let fear and weakness turn him into someone he didn't recognize. How Heather had been a fantasy, an escape from the reality of Mom's illness. I traded something real for something easy, he said, and I destroyed both of you in the process. You destroyed yourself, too. Yeah, he stared into his coffee. I keep thinking about all the time I wasted. Your mother died alone because I was too much of a coward to sit with her pain. You grew up without a father because I chose a woman I didn't even love over my own daughter. And for what? Heather left me the second things got hard. I'm dying alone in a rented room and the only person who might care is the daughter I failed. I care, I said, surprising myself. I'm angry and hurt, but I care. That's more than I deserve, he said again. He died 2 months later. Heather didn't come to the funeral. It was just me. Aunt Patricia, Brennan, and a handful of Dad's old colleagues who barely knew him. I didn't cry at the service. Didn't feel much of anything except a strange relief that it was over. The minister talked about Dad's business success, his dedication to his work, left out the parts about his failing marriage, his affair, his financial mismanagement, left out how he'd abandoned his daughter to chase happiness with someone else's wife. Afterward, Brennan pulled me aside. He left you everything. Wasn't much, but there's about $30,000 after the business sale in debts. Donate it, I said, to a cancer research charity in Mom's name. I inherited Dad's remaining assets. His car, which I sold, his furniture, which I donated, his personal effects, which I sorted through and kept almost nothing. But I did find one thing. A box of letters he'd written to Mom, but never sent. Letters from after her diagnosis, after he'd ended things with Heather the first time. I read them alone in the bookstore after hours. Sat in the back office surrounded by Mom's favorite books and read my father's words. Victoria, I don't know how to do this. Watch you die. Pretend everything is fine. I'm terrified every second. When I see you in pain, I want to run. I know that makes me a coward, but at least I can admit it here. I love you. I've always loved you, but loving you hurts. And I don't know how to live with that much pain. The letters got more desperate as Mom got sicker, more honest. He wrote about his fear, his guilt, how he turned back to Heather not because he loved her, but because being with her was easy. She didn't need anything from him, didn't remind him of death and loss and failure. The last letter was dated a week before Mom died. I've destroyed everything, I know that now. You're leaving me not just because you're dying, but because I've driven you away with my weakness. I see it in your eyes when you look at me. Disappointment. You thought I was stronger than that, so did I. I failed you as a husband, I'll fail Alexis as a father. I fail at everything that matters. By the time you read this, you'll be gone, and I'll have to live with knowing I never became the man you needed me to be. I put the letters in a drawer and never looked at them again. They changed nothing. Dad's self-awareness didn't erase his actions. His regret didn't give me back the father I'd needed or give Mom back the partner she deserved, but they explained some things. Not excused, explained. I'm 21 now, running Victoria's Books full-time while finishing my business degree online. The store is thriving. I've started hosting writing workshops, added a used book section, partnered with local schools for literacy programs. The neighborhood knows me as Victoria's daughter, the woman who brought the bookstore back to life, who filled it with warmth and light and carefully curated shelves. I live in Mom's house, the one that was always meant to be mine. I've made it beautiful. Every room reflects her taste, her warmth. I've added my own touches too, my books, my art, my life, but the foundation is hers. Aunt Patricia helps me manage Mom's other assets. The rental properties bring in steady income. The investments grow quietly in the background. I live comfortably, not extravagantly. I still work full-time because I love it, not because I need to. Sometimes I sit in Mom's room, the master bedroom I moved into after Dad left, and I read her journals, not the one about the affair, the others, the ones about her dreams, her plans, her hopes for me. She wanted me to be strong, independent, unafraid to fight for what was mine. I think I'm getting there. Last month, I got a Facebook message from Heather, long, rambling, full of excuses and apologies. She'd been in therapy, too, working through her own issues. She wanted closure, wanted to explain her side of things, how she'd fallen in love with a broken man. Tried to help him heal, got caught up in something bigger than herself. I deleted it without responding. Some people don't deserve closure, don't deserve forgiveness or understanding or a tidy ending to their story. Sometimes the best thing you can do is close the door and move on. I learned that from Mom. She couldn't leave Dad when she was alive. Couldn't protect herself when she was weak and sick and dying, but she protected me. She planned for me. She made sure I'd have the tools to fight back when I was strong enough. And the bookstore has become something more than a business. It's a community space, a place where people gather and connect and find stories that matter. I host book clubs for survivors of domestic violence, reading groups for teens struggling with loss, author events that focus on diverse voices and difficult topics. Mom would love it. I know she would. I keep her photo behind the register.